Thank you, Senator. Or Mr. Chairman, I spent about an hour yesterday afternoon reading the classified draft report of our committee on this subject. And all along, we've been talking about the Russians penetrating our systems and messing around with our elections. That's not sufficient. The language is what I learned yesterday was horrifying. What we saw wasn't messing around or penetrating. It was a sophisticated, thorough, comprehensive, malign, and malicious attack on our electoral system. And what worries me is that although the intelligence is uniform, that no votes were changed, they weren't doing it for fun in 2016. What it looks like is a test. And it was incredibly, as I say, thorough and comprehensive. I want to follow up on Senator Cornyn's question. We can patch software systems till the end of time, and we're not going to defeat these people. The history of warfare is the history of the invention of new offensive weapons, and then eventually defensive weapons catch up. We saw the advent of a serious offensive weapon in 2016 being used against us. All of the patches aren't going to work if we don't have a strategy of deterrence. And that's the point of the question that Senator Cornyn asked and Senator Heinrich asked, and we don't have that strategy. In 2016, we passed the National Defense Act. It had an amendment requiring the Secretary of Defense by last June to give us the elements of a national cyber strategy. It hasn't happened yet. 180 days from that report was supposed to be a report from the President. Of course, that hasn't happened yet because the first report hasn't happened. This problem is not being treated with the urgency that it deserves. And a deterrent strategy, because the problem now is the Russians sent in this whole operation into our election system, into our states, 21 states that we know of, and paid no price. And we've had testimony from admirals and generals and people in cybercom, and they've said, yes, Senator, there's no price that will change their calculation. And so, Secretary, I hope when you go back, and I'm not, this isn't, and by the way, this was a failure of the prior administration in my view, because we've known this for 4 or 5 years that this was coming. So this isn't a partisan observation, but I hope you'll go back and join with D&I Coates and with Secretary Mattis and the President and make this the highest priority that we have. This is, I believe, with the possible exception of North Korea's nuclear weapons, this is the most serious threat that our country faces today, and we are not adequately dealing with it. And please expunge from your lexicon the word whole of government. Every time I hear that, I think that means none of government. I want to hear who's in charge and what they're going to do about that. So, Secretary Nielsen, I think you're in a key position, and you can. I hope you'll read this classified report.
I look forward to it.
It will terrify you, and I think and of course this is just one aspect of this attack on us. So I believe this is an incredibly important area. Now, let me ask a more specific question. You mentioned earlier, we talked about clearance of state officials, and only 20 have been cleared. I hope that can be accelerated because we've already had several primary elections and we're headed into many more this spring. Do you have plans to try to accelerate that clearance? Because communication won't work if you can't tell them.
No, we do, yes, sir. It is a problem that is not unique, unfortunately, to this particular stakeholder set. So I do look forward in general.
No, you're right. 791,000 clearances we're behind. Nation.
I know. So but what we have done is we've worked out the processes whereby if we have actionable information, we will provide it to the state and local officials on a day read-in. So we're not letting the lack of a clearance hold us back. We're in contact with them. If we have information to share with them with respect to a real threat, we will do so.
Let me make a modest suggestion, because we're going to have state officials here soon. We've had state officials before. The general reaction is, and I don't want to overcharacterize it, but the general reaction is, we're doing a pretty good job, we're in good shape. I get the same thing in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee from utility executives. Don't worry, we've got it in hand. I don't believe that. You have the capability, this is my modest suggestion, create a red team in DHS, a group of really skillful hackers, and hack some of these states and show them how vulnerable they are, because I don't think they're going to believe it until you show them what your people can do, and that made me. This country has to wake up, and this I just suggest that as a possible technique. You've got some skilled people you can work with, NSA or Cybercom, and develop a red team that will kind of shock people into the realization of how serious and how vulnerable they are. Would you consider that suggestion?
We will consider it. We do try to currently get at that through our risk and vulnerability assessments. We continue to encourage states to take us up on that. That is a comprehensive assessment we do on site. It includes pen testing, it includes wireless access, it includes database. So it gets at some of what you're saying, but yes, sir, we need to help them understand where they're vulnerable.
Well, I appreciate
Absolutely.
your leadership and really urge you to go back with your hair on fire.
You have an advocate here.
This is an urgent matter. Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you. Seeing you back reminds me of the old country song, "How Can I Miss You If You Don't Go Away?"
Jeez.
Nice to see you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.